This podcast is presented by the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association and the Florida Department of Agriculture.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Brock Sheridan, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Horse Podcast. Joining me today is Steve Koch, FTBOA Vice President of Operations, to provide more context on how the House Bill 7063, the tax package, funds will be invested for the benefit of our Florida-breds. Well, the House Bill 7063 nets the industry nearly $67 million over 2 years. Can you give us a quick recap of how that pie gets sliced?
Yeah, absolutely, Brock. On an annual basis, it's actually fairly simple. It's first, there's nearly $6 million, about $6 million in tax credits to fund this new federal regulatory authority, the Horse Racing Integrity Authority. And that's really important because what that means is we're not tapping purses or other industry resources to pay for those new fees to the industry. So that's actually a really critical win. And then there's $15 million. It goes to Gulfstream, where Gulfstream and the horsemen can decide how they invest that between purses and the facility. And similarly, $5 million is going to Tampa Bay Downs and its horsemen. That likely is all headed for purses. Then upon that, you layer on another $5 million for FTBOA, where FTBOA will target that funds to drive purse incentives and awards for the next couple of years. And then finally, there's another $2.5 million for what is known as to insiders, it's known as the TriParty Agreement, essentially mutually agreed funding for Florida-breds and open races and Florida races at the Florida racetracks.
Well, you talk about the TriParty Agreement, and it has kind of a complicated name, confusing name. Who's involved in the TriParty Agreement? And actually tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Brock, I think that's an important question, and it's simpler than it sounds. Florida Statute, Chapter 550, that's which governs the implementation of various Florida-bred incentives. That statute requires a certain percentage of awards must go into purses or owners' awards at the racetrack, and in a fashion that must be mutually agreed upon by three parties, hence the term tri-party. So these three parties would be the FTBOA, of course, the racetracks, either Gulfstream or Tampa Bay Downs, and then the respective Horsemen's Association at those racetracks. So at Gulfstream, it's the Florida Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, FTHA, and at Tampa Bay, it's the Tampa Bay Downs HBPA. So in any given calendar year, there's two agreements, one at Gulfstream and one at Tampa Bay Downs. So for the current year, the 2023 agreement, so this is prior to our big win in Tallahassee this spring, the 2023 Tri-Party dictated several very popular and long-standing programs that valued a total of $1,750,000 at Gulfstream Park and just over $1 million at Tampa Bay Downs. And there's key components in both of those agreements that our audience is going to recognize. There's the $1.2 million Florida Sire Stakes 2-year-old race series, which is very popular and very lucrative. There's $450,000 that goes into something called the FBIF, the Florida-Bred Incentive Fund. And the current iteration of the FBIF at Gulfstream is awarding $10,000 to Florida-bred winners of maiden special weights and to Florida-bred maiden breakers in the claiming ranks of up to $5,000 per winner. So that's obviously very popular. And then there are $5,000 win bonuses for Florida sired maiden breakers in additional. As an aside, I can't help myself. I have to point out that as of this date, we're June 21st. We're filming June 21st today. As of today, Florida-breds have won 100% of the 2-year-old maiden special weights at Gulfstream Park in 2023. So with any luck, let's just keep that record alive. I think it's pretty fantastic. Florida-breds back down to nobody. In Tampa, the Tri-Party partners the racetrack and the horsemen and FTBOA on the Florida Cup. That's a race card of Florida-bred stake races that adds up to a value of $660,000 every March. And there's $400,000 of incentives added to most of the open stakes at Tampa Bay Downs.
Well, talking about these tri-party agreements, I mean, they offer some major incentives to both Florida-breds and Florida-breds who are by Florida sires. Tell us about how this tax package really boosts that TriParty Agreement, those incentives in 2024 and 2025.
This win in Tallahassee causes a massive boost in the owner award and incentives at both the racetracks through the TriParty Agreement. The Gulfstream TriParty Agreement that drives those owners awards and incentives that jumps from $1,750,000 in the current year to next year, it goes up almost 90% to $3.3 million, Brock. And at Tampa Bay, it jumps almost 50% to just over $1.5 million. So at Gulfstream, what will happen is the $1.2 million Florida Sire Stakes 2-year-old series, very popular, very lucrative, that remains in place as it is now. And then the Florida Sires, the FSS incentives for 2-year-old maiden special weight winners, that expands to a full-year initiative. And the Florida-Bred Incentive Fund, that $450,000 benefits for Florida-Breds in open races. In 2023, it's $450,000. In 2024 and 25, it'll be $1.3 million. It's undecided right now how that $1.3 million will be distributed through the purse account at Gulfstream, but I'm certain at that level of funding, it's going to spur some Florida-bred entries at the track next year. Tampa Bay, similar to Gulfstream, it keeps a lot of the same program in place, the existing TriParty. That's the Florida Cup and these $400,000 of open stakes bonuses. But for the first time ever, it's going to afford a $500,000 FBIF, Florida-Bred Incentive Program, at Tampa Bay. And that'll be obviously very popular. It's new, never been at Tampa Bay before, and it's yet to be announced how that money will be distributed. But again, I guarantee it spurs entries at Tampa Bay next spring.
And it sounds like the owners of these Florida-Breds have plenty of reasons to fill up the starting gates with their Florida-Breds over the next couple of years here in Florida. But are there incentives that are over and above the TriParty Agreement?
FTBOA is already funding some really significant stakes bonuses with our own resources outside of the TriParty agreements. Open stakes winners at Gulfstream in 2023 are taking home an additional, not part of the purse, an additional $25,000 per Florida-bred winner in an open stake. That and the Florida sired winners in the restricted stakes also may score that same $25,000 bonus. You know, that's a pretty big advantage for our home horses wanting to take a shot at the bigger dance floors. We've paid out 6 of these bonuses in just under a couple of months, and it does seem like that number is going to increase substantially as we move through the summer and into the fall racing campaigns. This program is proving very popular, and I would anticipate it continuing for some time to come.
Well, Steve, thanks for stopping by and explaining the tax package and all the additional monies that are going to be available to the owners and breeders here in Florida. And that's going to do it today on the Florida Horse Podcast. And I'm Brock Sheridan. Thanks for stopping by.
This podcast is presented by the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association and the Florida Department of Agriculture.